Is Florida State way ahead of the Florida Gators right now? Is there a gap? How wide is the gap? All questions that we've heard over the last couple of days. We're not holding anything back in this video. We're not saving you for some big, massive hook later. We're going to tell you right up front, yes, there's a gap between Florida State and Florida right now, and we're going to just let you in on a little secret. It's wide. It's huge. The gap is massive. We're going to talk to you in this video about why the gap exists, how large the gap is right now, and why Gator fans are point blank wrong in thinking that they're anywhere close to FSU right now. First of all, there's a massive gap due to the difference in talent on both rosters. Florida fans are quick to point out the 2022 team composite rankings on 247. UF was 14th and Florida State was 17th. The average ranking for the players on both rosters was less than a point off, but those team composite rankings measure recruited star rankings. They don't measure what actually happens on the field. They don't measure what your eyes told you happened last season. Well, Florida State was better at just about every position group on the roster. Let's look at them. First of all, Florida State clearly had the better quarterback. Jordan Travis ran leaps and bounds better than Anthony Richardson did. He also threw the ball much, much better. Led his team better as well. We don't have to spend a ton of time there to know that the number one overall Pro Football Focus rated quarterback is better than whatever Florida put out there on the field. Pro Football Focus also ranked Trey Benson, Florida State's running back, as sixth best in the country. Benson had both more yards and a better average per carry than both of UF's top running backs in Johnson and Etienne. Those backs are good. I won't front. Florida has really, really good backs, but they're just not to the same level as Trey Benson right now. Florida State's running back room and Florida's running back room are both strengths, but I like Florida State just a tad bit better. Johnny Wilson was the best wide receiver of any wide receiver on either roster. Florida had some nice receivers this year, but I think Johnny Wilson was the absolute top of the line when it came to either roster. I also like Florida State's depth a little bit better than Florida's this year. Florida State's guys performed better, probably due to having a better quarterback, but I also think that group is really, really talented. When you look at the fact that they're also adding five-star Hakeem Williams, and they're going to get Winston Wright back this year, there's no question that Florida State's wide receiver room is just plain out better. I also think that when you look at the offensive line, that's something that you'd probably say Florida's was slightly better than Florida State's last year. UF had a really, really good offensive line, and though I think Florida State's was the best it had been in years, I like Florida's offensive line last year a ton. Here's the problem with that. They lost 4 starters, and they're going to have to replace all those guys. It's a big question mark. Will those guys out of the portal produce? Will they produce to the level that Florida got last year? I don't know. It's hard to say. Florida State, though, probably returning 3 or 4 starters if Big Meech's waiver gets approved. And they also picked up the top offensive line prospect in the portal in Jeremiah Byers, a couple other starters as well. Florida State certainly looks like they rebolstered their offensive line and should take another step forward. Not sure if we can say the same thing for Florida's in 2023. Time will tell there. On defense, we only have to go through them. Every single unit that Florida State had on defense was better than Florida's in 2022. And they're all going to be better in 2023 as well. The middle of the line with Fabian Lovett, Fisk, and Darrell Jackson. The edges with McClendon and Verse and Edmond and other guys on that line. There's no question Florida State's defensive line is going to be better. Florida's linebackers were terrible this year. Florida State's got Bethune, Deloach coming back, and Lundy. Florida State's linebackers will be better, and I think the secondary is going to be better as well. Florida State's roster was already better than UF's in 2022, and the Noles also added the top 1 or 2 portal class based on whose rankings you're looking at. UF's is ranked down in the teens, and though UF's recruiting class is slightly better than Florida State's, those aren't guys that are going to make immediate impacts. Day 1 impact type guys just aren't really there. All this to say, there's a huge talent gap, and it leans Florida State's way. There's also a massive gap in coaching. UF ran off a really good coach in Dan Mullen, a coach who had just beat UGA the year before, and a coach who would have had them competing if their NIL got figured out, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Mike Norvell's a great coach. His offensive schemes and his development are both fantastic, and you can see what he's done in just 3 short years in Tallahassee and at Florida State. Meanwhile, Napier is out here not being able to figure out when to go for 2, when to go for it on 4th down, how special teams works, when to take timeouts. and also how to beat the vaunted Vanderbilt Commodores. How wide is that gap? Between the coaches, it seems to be pretty big now. We'll see what Napier is able to do. He's vaunted as a great recruiter, supposed to be able to recruit better than Mullen, though his first class finished well short of Mullen's bump class, and doesn't seem to be very good on the field either. How big is the gap in general between the two teams? I want to talk about that, but just before we do, let's give some love to our friends over at Gramco. You can go to thegramco.com right now, and just below me you can see you can save 25% if you go use TJ25 at checkout. TJ25 for 25% off of all of your Delta 8 needs, whether you're looking for gummies, pre-rolls. They've got a wake and bake coffee that is phenomenal. You need to go check them out, thegramco.com, TJ25 for all of your Delta 8 needs. Appreciate Gramco for rocking with us and for hanging out as we do this channel, as we get you guys this content as fast as we can and as well as we can. They've always been there to support us, and we appreciate them. You should try them out today if you haven't already. Here's how wide that gap is. It's wide enough that right now ESPN is taking notice, and that FSU is in the top 5 of their way too early preseason rankings, while UF isn't even being mentioned. It's wide enough that when people grade the jobs done by head coaches that we just referred to a second ago, they're giving Mike Norvell an A. Billy Napier is getting like a C or a D. It's wide enough that when UF fans hyped their generational quarterback last year and pretended that he was a legitimate Heisman candidate, people laughed. But now the national media is hyping Jordan Travis and his top 3 Heisman odds here in January of 2023. It's wide enough that UF and their NIL have been the laughingstock of the college football landscape for their mishandling of the Jaden Rashada saga. And it's wide enough that Billy Napier, if he doesn't win 8 games this year, he's going into 2024 on the hot seat. Meanwhile, Mike Norvell is getting tons of love in not only the national media, other coaches, other fans, and he's likely looking at another extension. Why are Gator fans wrong about the gap? Well, they're coping right now. They know that their program is in shambles. We don't know if Billy Napier can fix it just yet. For the first time ever, they lost to every single one of their rivals this season, and they also lost to Vandy. Outside of that, they also kicked a very sad field goal at the end of the game against Oregon State in the bowl game, and they're just doing their best to cope in this moment. They're claiming a moral victory by saying that we only lost by 7 points to Florida State, and that gap is only 7 points. It's only a touchdown, and that's how far away from the Noles we are right now. But that logic just doesn't hold up. Florida State played a game slightly closer than FSU fans would have liked, but the result of one game doesn't determine where a program is. There are a lot of factors in all of that. It's a rivalry. You get a little juiced up. Florida State obviously had to fight back from being down early. But if we use their logic on other games, would we say that UF's program is in a better position than Utah? Florida beat Utah earlier in the year. As much as I'd like to joke about this, and I'd like to make jokes about Florida being behind Vandy, nobody legitimately thinks that even though Vandy beat Florida this year, that Vandy's a better program than UF. That's just not realistic. And I know that that's what Gator fans want to claim right now, and it sounds good, and it's a lot of fun, but they're just not on the same planet. Heck, Florida State lost to both Wake and NC State this year. Does anyone seriously think that Florida State's program is in worse shape than either of those? Of course not. Florida Gator fans are coping right now, and like we said, they'll use anything they can to avoid the truth. What is the truth? The truth is that UF is staring another 500 season right in the face. They've got losses coming to Utah, LSU, UGA, Tennessee, and Florida State this year. Kentucky, South Carolina, and Arkansas won't be easy either. UF took a significant step back at quarterback by taking Graham Mertz through the portal. Their program is a dumpster fire, while Florida State is about to compete for not only their conference, but the college football playoff. When you look at where both teams are, where both programs are, it's laughable that Gator fans would think that they're anywhere close to where Florida State's at. The national media, the national landscape, other coaches in this country all tend to agree. Florida State is peaking at the right time, and we'll see what 2023 holds for them. But the expectations in Gainesville this year are just going to be to make a bowl. And hopefully they can find a way to get in the end zone this time. because the sad field goal with less than a minute is pretty pathetic to watch. We're not alone in this thinking. If you want to know what ESPN thinks and why they're buying the hype of Florida State, you can click this link right here. If you want to watch a video that YouTube thinks you should watch, you can click right here. Talk to you guys later. Go Noles.